What is going on, everybody? Bobby Five with my man Eric Sheets-Saber. We are going to be talking a little showdown for the NFL on a Thursday. Sheets, this is it's actually a game that I could have seen getting a little interest in a big slate from the Carolina side, but it's going to be a little hard to get off the board tonight. And any sort of overall takes before we jump into the game when you pull up on your screen if you have a chance?
Yeah, first of all, welcome to the new backgrounds for those of you that haven't noticed yet. We resolved the technical difficulties on my end, and we're working on the ones on Bobby's end, and we're just slowly but surely improving. Can I tell you? Yeah, it was hard enough to try to fade Lamar when he was going to be 100% owned. This one's going to be really tough. McCaffrey just has such an incredible percentage of the usage that it's going to be difficult to fade him. So for me, it's going to be a question of what other kind of funny business, you know what I mean? like you can do to get yourself a little different and to kind of just kind of screw around a little bit. And I've taken some shots at doing that in the last couple of weeks with some success and some not so much success. But I got a couple of ideas here. Got a couple of ideas. I do think that from a game script perspective, I do think that it's a very it's a Carolina. You tell me if you agree with this. For me, it's a Carolina wins it kind of handily type idea. I mean, Carolina's like really improved with their new look, whatever it is, and get a totally healthy McCaffrey, Darnold. It's so funny. Like you talked about this couple of slates ago when you're like, I don't know what it is. The public hates Darnold, and GMs think he's like the greatest quarterback ever, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But listen, not that he's been like freaking Pro Bowl, but he's been totally efficient. He's been doing exactly what he needed to do. And you know what? It's not so hard, but it's easier when you're in a situation where you have freaking McCaffrey. It's like everybody's a much better quarterback if you got McCaffrey back there. I promise you.
Well, I mean, you've got a good receiving core on top of it.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I think McCaffrey's great. I think he's phenomenally overrated. Just hilariously. If you gave any other running back 15 targets a game, they're all going to put up ridiculous numbers. Now he's very talented.
Well,
but
don't you think a lot of that is that's kind of like circular logic? I mean, I would say that the reason why they give him 15 targets is because he's ultra talented.
If he's so talented, why do you get like four yards per reception?
I don't know. I mean,
no, I'm just saying, I hear a lot of times people mention him as being like the best running back. No, he's the best fantasy running back. That's all I'm saying. Right. I don't think that I think that you have you've got a good decent coaching staff. You've got great receivers or good receivers in Moore and Anderson. I think Moore is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. And yes, McCaffrey is a great weapon to have, but part of it is that they just feed no matter the game flow to him. He gets more of a chance than anybody else in football. And it's great. I mean, he's great. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's is so much better than everybody else kind of a running back. I think he is really great though.
Nonetheless, he makes Sam Darnold's life much easier.
Yes.
And certainly easier than Darnold had it in New York. I promise you that.
Yeah.
So so for me, it's I'm not gonna have that much coming out of Houston. Like most of my lineups are maybe gonna have one or two. I don't think I'm gonna have many lineups where I have like a whole bunch of Houston. So that's my overall slate view. I mean, what are your ideas? And then we can go into some kind of like funny business plans.
I'm trying to figure out how I can get more exposure to Houston. Well, first of all, if we think Carolina is going to blow them out, then we definitely should be playing a lot of Houston. I would argue maybe even more Houston, although it's hard to figure out exactly who we want to play. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's the good thing. Maybe we go with the lower owned of the running back trio and play it that way. There's no reason why Phillip Lindsay couldn't break a big play. He's not my favorite. Sheets, why don't you take over talking while I load our last video?
Yeah, so I got three guys that I'm gonna have at least one of in every lineup. And I think it's a little bit asking for trouble to take two. So I have three cheap receivers for Houston that are giving me any kind of projection. And I'm gonna probably shuffle those around. And these are actual receivers. I don't know what their target share is going to be or whatever it is, but it's Showdown. One of them I'm showing to get a lot of ownership. Like Chris Conley, it looks to be really, really popular. Like at least my first look is that I'm showing him like 30% owned, but I'll throw Anthony Miller into the mix at 1K, and I'll throw Andre Roberts into the mix at 600. So those three guys for Houston are going to be my kind of, receivers that are kind of, they're kind of darts to throw in there. The other kind of more obvious things, you could obviously play the quarterback, and I wasn't gonna. And then look, Brandon Cooks is obviously going to be the top option, but fun is that. So there's Brandon Cooks is probably the top option. Then there's Pharaoh Brown. He's only 2,600. Jordan Akins is only 2,200. I'm gonna have some of all of that, but my main, the least what I'm looking at right now, my main three dudes I'm going to shuffle around are going to be Anthony Miller, Chris Conley, and Andre Roberts, just for Showdown fun.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Anthony Miller, just a good career on these little Showdown slates when he was with the Bears. He won me some money. I know he run. I think it was.
Did he?
Somebody else told me. Yeah, those Bears, they had that sort of wide receiver carousel after their Allen Robinson, and there was a way to. I think he got there for me a couple times. I can't remember what the exact tournaments were, but yeah, I sort of agree with what you're saying. I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing Brandon Cooks, by the way. Just in case anybody, I'm curious where the ownership actually ends up on these guys, because I can imagine Brandon Cooks actually being okay here. It's kind of unfortunate because Houston, who knows, maybe they'd be 2-0 right now if Tyrod Taylor doesn't get hurt. Kind of unfortunate for them. I'm having trouble with who I really want out of their receiving core as well, but I think that Miller is the guy I may side with. I'll probably have to do a little more digging as the day goes on, but Miller and Conley I have interest in. I think I may side with Miller with very similar splits at I mean, very like the reception, all the props are pretty similar for them. And while they're a little bit different odds for the props, they're pretty close. They're close enough. I do like Brandon Cooks as well, but I think we should be looking at the tight ends. It's just hard to know who to pick. I think that, quarterback safety blanket, you're going to use a tight end, you're going to use a running back. So pass catching backs wise, historically, we all know that's David Johnson's thing. For a game like this, would it be David Johnson, or would you maybe get some Phillip Lindsay in that situation? I think I might lean Lindsay. And I think you're wanting to play one of those. I think one of those guys probably is the guy who gets the majority of the passing down work. And I could see them being a safety valve for, the quarterback who basically doesn't have any business being where he is. But I'm having trouble deciding between the tight ends, between Brown and Aiken. I think and Aikens, my gut instinct says Brown, but I don't really have anything to back that up. And I think you're going to have to get these things right, because we're playing McCaffrey, right? I don't think you have to play Darnold, but I do want to play the receiver. I'm actually picking on the Carolina side is not my favorite guy, because I like DJ Moore as a guy who, when you're moving the ball, when you're in a competitive game, that the guy who's going to get the catches, the guy who's going to get the work, maybe some red zone opportunities, but the big play, and he's a big play guy too. But I think you've got some big play potential from Robbie Anderson and Terrence Marshall. So Anderson and Marshall are more my guys today than DJ Moore at the moment, which will end up, of course, killing me, because I'm like the biggest DJ Moore fan. He won me the big one, the six figures one time with Cam a couple years back. I love the guy. I've been following his career, and I really, really, I like him tonight. I just really like Robbie Anderson and Terrence Marshall, and those are the guys I would probably side with. Not necessarily playing both, but I'm looking at McCaffrey with one of those guys. And then I'm kind of leaning towards playing the other side of it, towards playing the Cooks, and then one other receiver with Lindsay, and potentially just using the quarterback Davis Mills, because I don't know how else they're going to move the ball against Carolina. We saw that New Orleans couldn't run it against them. That's what I'm trying to do. Lindsay or Johnson are my bigger decisions. Even though Ingram is the main back there, I do think that the other guys are going to have a better chance to outscore him, and they're going to be lower owned. So I'm playing that angle. I know you don't like the angle thing, but McCaffrey. And by the way, I think that playing the Carolina defense, in case I didn't mention it, is a very good idea. They aren't cheap, and I can see why. This could get really ugly here for Houston. So Panthers defense: Miller, McCaffrey, one of Anderson or Marshall, and then I'm trying to figure out what to do with the other guys that I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, Marshall's definitely in there for me as well. And there's just going to be like most showdowns. So let's go over this again. I don't know at what stage of the game people are joining us, but again, if you're going to play showdown, I mean, I think it's a good idea to leave money on the table, and should always look at ideas about what would putting somebody cheap in the captain do for you. Now, to this week, it won't do anything for you, but I think it's a good exercise to always do, just to see, like, because there were a couple of slates like last week, by the way, like if a cheap captain worked out, I mean, it didn't, but if a cheap captain worked out, it would have been able to get you, Adams, Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Goff, you know what I mean? Like everybody. But it just didn't work out that way. But I think that there's all these guys, there's no guys that are that you really need as opposed, instead of McCaffrey. So it's not like, if I put, give me an example, somebody really, really cheap in the captain. Let's say I was going to put Pharaoh Brown in the captain just for the hell of it. Like I couldn't even spend all this money, you know what I mean? Right. In the flex. So, so that's not a slate for that, but it is a slate again, where you can, what you could do? You could play like, you could overstack, you go like 4-1, like Carolina, and include like the defense in there. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
has to be 6.
Oh, sorry. Like, what do you mean?
You said 4-1. Oh, you said 4. You said 4-1. Sorry, I didn't understand.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you can go 5-1, including the defense, right? And just play for a just total freaking blowout, and then just get the one run back right for Houston. You know what I mean? Like that's I don't think that's going to be particularly earth shattering either, but that's at least one type of at least intelligent type of construction you can make.
I mean, I think if you're talking about Carolina really blowing them out, then you're going to absolutely need to have more than one Houston player, because there's just the number of pass attempts. Like if they get really down, if you think it's going to be like a 20-point blowout, you're talking about 40 pass attempts. That has to go.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
So that's why I'm in on the.
Let's do it the other way. Let's build one just for fun. So let's start with the Houston guys. So let's presume that Mills has got to get something, right? And let's just, if you were going to play Cooks and then you were going to put McCaffrey in the captain, I wonder what that would leave you. So if you were just going to fill the rest of these out with Carolina guys, I mean, you could do it, but what you'd have to do is then you'd have to go really, really, you'd have to find another cheapo somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any Carolina cheapo? I looked at the Houston cheapos, but not the closest thing I come up to the Carolina cheapo is probably Marshall, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you did that,
go ahead.
You can play the kicker.
I mean, yeah, you're flirting with a little bit of chalk here.
Okay.
But I do think that maybe Mills doesn't end up quite as owned. I don't know, actually. It's going to be hard to know without ownerships later. Me and Rhodey, by the way, I think are going to do a live one tonight at 7:30.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So we'll have that covered.
So you're going to do live, but you might not be around for baseball live, you're saying?
Yeah, I have an in-between skit thing. I'm going to try and.
Oh, we could be like the big guys. We could just keep the stream running. Like you could take over and do the football after baseball's over. So after I finish baseball.
Yeah, no, it's actually that almost could work out for today. It's a little bit of a gap, but it would be cool. All right, yeah. So I'm thinking I don't think I'm going to avoid too much of the McCaffrey in my captain. He's going to be there mostly. It's hard to get around it. I do think there's an argument to be made on the other side for maybe taking a shot at a Cooks or even a Davis Mills here. I don't love it, but it's just if you want to try something different. I like the Anderson. I want to play Anderson or Marshall. I want to play, I think Miller. It's Miller or why is the other receiver? Conley escaping me. But I think I prefer Miller. And yeah, it just, we'll see what the ownership's going to be. And then I think Philip Lindsay out of the backfield, potentially in this kind of game environment. Maybe I go back to David Johnson, but I'm thinking about that one. And then I like the Panthers defense. So I could see it being a 4-2 for me for the Panthers if I use the defense, but I think that I might even end up trying to get some 3-3s or 4-2s in the favor of Houston, just, playing McCaffrey and the defense and then just loading up on Houston.
I can't fill in the last spot or whatever it is, but you could play both Miller and Conley.
Yeah, this is mega chalk though, right?
That's got to be chalky, right? I mean,
Yeah.
This looks too easy, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
All right, guys. Well, we will be with you at 7:30 Eastern to hopefully get everything done. Thanks so much for tuning in. I've got to take this call, unfortunately.
All right.
Sheep and I will be back with you live for baseball in a moment.